Ipswich 1, Manchester United 1. I'm joined by that man right there, Ste Howson. First game under Ruben Amorim. That was more like it, wasn't it? A big change. United looking like one of the best teams in the country all of a sudden. How good was that?
Yeah. It's kind of why I wasn't like brimming with excitement. It wasn't like when we got rid of Moyes and we've got like this obviously dog manager that needs to go because he's literally holding us back. I thought Ten Hag was doing an all right job, to be honest. And without having a load of players to come in, without having a transfer window immediately at your disposal, it's not even like when Jose went. Like when Jose went, you could tell all the players were Fredders with him. So you're like, someone who comes in and just cracks a bit of a dad joke might actually get a tune out of these players. That wasn't the case. It was just like United have been boring all season. And guess what happened today? We were boring. Like, there was loads of stuff that we've seen all season today in that game. And there was a little bit of some newness to it. But by and large, I've seen that performance 5 times this year.
Yeah. Well, let's start with the newness then. We'll start with the changes that we did see. Obviously, just from a personnel perspective, it was clearly a 3 or 5 at the back. How did you sort of like the way that, you know, certain players like Ahmad adapted to that? Dalot doing a slightly different job in there as well. Evans as well, maybe struggling a bit more.
Yeah, I thought Johnny Evans struggled. Was it maybe because it was like trying to deal with Amari Hutchinson, who was, what would we say, the best player on the pitch, I think, today? Him
and Onana, I would put, tied first.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, certainly one that weren't allowed to use his hands. He was probably the best one on the pitch. It looked like they was asking Johnny Evans to press him quite high up. Maybe they went, Johnny's not really going to have the pace to cover him behind, so let him be a little bit more aggressive. It felt like he was engaging all the way into the Ipswich half quite frequently. In terms of our in-possession shape, there was no change. There was literally no change to our in-possession shape. It was a 3-2-5. It's exactly what we've been seeing all season. It was, the build-up was a little bit different. The playing out looked like there was an attempt for it to be a little bit different. I didn't think it was very effective. That could be because of how aggressive Ipswich like to press. Not everyone is going to press the same way Ipswich do. I thought Ahmad adapted to it quite well. There was a lot more defensive work from him, a lot deeper back. But there wasn't a million new things for everybody to adapt to. I thought one of the sort of most interesting / surprising things was deploying Eriksen and Casemiro, who both dropped to last season level performance, which was a little bit annoying.
It was almost quite exciting to see us not lose when our midfield was as sort of anonymous as it was. They both couldn't really get into the game at all, could they? You mentioned about the positioning as we attacked. I thought there was one time where it was in the second half where Garnacho did that sort of run through the lines and cut it back to the penalty spot, or cut it back to the edge of the 6-yard box. No one got on the end of it. It didn't lead to anything. But that was the only time I thought that felt a little bit different. Is that just a product of the fact that he's only been here a week? A lot of these players haven't sort of got in with him. Or do you think, generally speaking, we are going to see a lot of similarities to what Ten Hag was doing, even going forward?
Yeah, you are going to see so many similarities. Like, the in-possession shape is literally what we've been playing all season. It's 3-2-5. The only difference is now where earlier in the season it might be one of the fullbacks was tasked with staying in the back line and one of the fullbacks was allowed to move up, whereas now both of the wing-backs are tasked with covering so much ground, and you have a dedicated 3 to stay back, and that double pivot in midfield can kind of stay there and rotate the ball around. So you're asking for a lot out of your wing-backs. But the shapes are going to be very, very similar. So you might see a bit of a difference, and maybe we saw a little bit of that with some of Garnacho's positioning because he was drifting quite wide. I know you're kind of meant to drift a little bit wide like that, but I think you're also expecting Dalot, or maybe there's a gaping hole there for a left wing back come January coming in. You're expecting someone to take the impetus up in that area, so Garnacho can maybe play in the half space a little bit more and be a little bit closer to Rashford. Because whether it was Rashford or whether it was Højlund, completely isolated, which is what's been the problem all season. Right? Rashford had like half of his touches in the first 90 seconds when he put the ball away. Like, that was just, Rashford's had the exact same game that Højlund has had recently. Ineffective.
Yeah.
Despite scoring.
Yeah, he had 13 touches in the whole game, Rashford. and Rasmus came on and had 8 touches as well. So yeah, that position, whoever it was doing it, was very isolated. Just looking at you mentioned Ahmad. I thought he was someone who continued the sort of good form that we've seen over the last few weeks from him. Did you like him in his own 18-yard box? Because that's the one area where he's not really been before much, because you're not expected to get back in there. A couple of times I thought he covered quite well. Do you think that he can work going forward in that position, or would you want to maybe see him in one of those number 10 spots?
I think I would prefer him in the 10 spot, but I can understand why he played there, because I think he has a little bit level of trust more. I think his decision making's more. I think a little bit like Mazraoui, when you look at him and you just go, I just think he's an intelligent footballer. Like, I think he wins his duels. I think he makes great decisions when he's in possession, and I think he's got a little bit of an X factor about him as well. We maybe only saw him really come out of his shell twice in the game. One's in the first minute when he sets up the goal for Rashford, where he actually gets, a little bit of putting the ball in front of somebody. And then one's right at the very end where he cuts inside and he ends up having a quite a weak shot in the grand scheme of things. But like, that was the only two sort of times where you're thinking, like, I know you've got this in your locker. Can we not just do that more? Like, show me a little bit more of that, because he gets into great positions, and I don't know, does he maybe play a little bit safe at times? Whereas I think Garnacho goes the opposite way. I think Garnacho plays with so much risk at all times that it affects his decision making. Is there a balance between the two of them, where Garnacho plays a tiny bit more safe, but Ahmad can play a tiny bit more risky, and maybe between them you kind of get a little bit more productivity with a little bit of risk, because you have to play with risk in the final third.
Yeah. What do you think Amorim learned from his squad today? Finishing that game, obviously we're all looking at it, we want to see big changes, we want to see this radical new Man United, and obviously it was never going to happen after a week in training. But what do you think he takes away from this game that maybe he didn't know until he saw them at sort of full speed?
Possibly the fact of, you should know this, we all know this. The Premier League doesn't really have games that you can rest. Away at Ipswich wouldn't have been a fixture I would have been picking, especially with the connection to Kieran McKenna. It wouldn't have been a game I would have been picking to be anyone's first game in charge. That was always going to be a difficult fixture, which is nuts to say, because realistically you should just turn up there and fucking slaughter them, right? But it doesn't work like that. I hope that he got that message early doors. Like, shit, this team's probably worth like a couple of mil, really, on paper. But they've just given us a right good test today. I'm not sure that's the sort of thing you get regularly in Portugal. So I'm hoping that he got that. And I'm hoping that he realised you're not going to just hold possession by account of it being Eriksen and Casemiro in midfield, that you might actually have to work for it. Because I thought that was where United broke down. Christian Eriksen this season has been so reliable, so creative, so productive, high 90% pass completion. He was like 80% today and didn't create a fucking carrot. Like, very un-Christian Eriksen 2024 level of performance that was. So I don't know if he goes, do you know what, we might just have to combat a bit more. I was shocked Ugarte didn't start. Shocked.
Yeah. He said he only had one training session, didn't he? Do you think that's why?
Nailed. I thought it was the most nailed-on thing because of their prior relationship. Oh my God, there's definitely, and with Casemiro going away on holiday and all the rest of all of the factors at play, I was like, the one thing I can nail my hat on is that Ugarte plays today, almost before an hour. Like, that's how sure I was that he was going to play, and then he didn't. You're like, okay, I think, and then there was all the confusion when he did put the team out, like, is this going to be Garnacho at left wing back? Some people suggesting Casemiro at centre half. Fucking, no one had a clue, did they? Nobody had a clue.
No, because we had two wingers, two full-backs and two centre-backs playing, and we're playing with three centre-backs and no full-backs, so how...
It could have been 4-2-3-1, couldn't it?
Yeah.
It really could have just been a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah, it could have. Just in terms of players coming back, because I think when there's a system change, because you're so expecting people to be playing in different areas, you almost forget the fact that we had Johnny Evans, who's probably fourth choice centre-back. We had Mazraoui, who's a full-back playing at centre-back. We had a left-back playing at left wing-back, a right-winger playing at right wing-back. It's going to take a bit of time for all of that unsettledness to sort of resolve itself. Martinez wasn't even there. Luke Shaw's just come back. I know you've mentioned that there's issues with quality in the squad just fundamentally, but do you still see levels we can sort of move up in under Amorim this season?
I think this team is fundamentally quite strong defensively, which I feel fraudulent saying that on the basis of that Ipswich have just absolutely outgunned us today and probably deserved the win, really. They had the shots. If it wasn't for Onana, we're sitting here talking about how we just lost to Ipswich. Simple as. Again. But I think you get Martinez back, and even, like, I know we haven't seen him yet, but get Yoro playing, and I think, you know, that 3 centre-halves, I'm very happy with those 3 centre-halves. I still don't know where you put Mazraoui. You find a place for him because he's just a great footballer. And you find a way to fit him in. Maybe it's left wing-back in this system, because I did like Ahmad, but maybe it's right wing-back, because I think Ahmad in the 10 would be more effective than Garnacho was. And closer to the striker, I think suits him a little bit better, but maybe they like him because of his just sort of inherent nature to compete and win duels. Like, you can't write that, can you? He's a little fucking bulldog. And I wonder, once you start moving those players around, does that have any sort of impact? I just think that the team's lacking goals. Roy Keane said it, and we've said it since summer. This team can't score goals. No, you can have all the systems you want in the world. If you haven't got a Robin van Persie and a Ruud van Nistelrooy, you ain't scoring goals. You know, the best system in the world is not turning Danny Welbeck into a 40-goal-a-season striker, is it? So you just need someone who can put the ball in the back of the net consistently, week in, week out. You get that, and then your system can defend, and your system can help retain the ball and help you out there, but you got to have goals. There's a reason that goal scorers go for so much in the transfer market. There's a reason why the likes of Sir Alex Ferguson always had to go and buy those goals. We've never had an academy player come through and be the number 9 of this football club, and be the sort of, outside of Dennis fucking Violet before everyone starts, like, it just hasn't been the case. You know, you have to buy your goals in. And I think that's what we need to do. From all of the great goal scorers this football club has had, you know, from Andy Cole and Dwight York through to, you know, Ruud and Van Persie and even Dennis Law, they've all been bought. You have to go and get your goals from somewhere. And I think this team at the moment, we gambled on Højlund that he might grow into something, and he might. Cool, you're going to have to be a very patient individual and to get him over the line to do it, because even though I think he's got good technical fundamentals, I don't know if he's got the instinct to be that, to be a Robin van Persie, to be a Ruud van Nistelrooy, and that's what we need. We need someone that you know, look, fucking Salah. Look at that goal he scored today.
Yeah.
Stuffy, fluky bastard. Had no right to even get on the end of it, but he does, and he does that 30 times a season. That's what United don't have at the moment. We have to score perfect goals, and I think until we get a proven goal scorer, even if it's an older head, you know, we're going to continue to have boring games of football. Right. Thank you very much for joining us. Hit subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you in a bit.